Hey everyone, John Hendrix here for Saints News Network, coming at you with another video talking a lot about the Saints final roster. We got to see everything unfold on Tuesday, got out of practice. Of course, before we get into that, bonus episode that's sponsored by Justin Burgess of Ben Pro today. Just want to thank him for training camp. But again, if you have a business in the greater New Orleans region and you need assistance with any type of employee benefits or health insurance, give Justin a call, 504-888-8038. He's brought us all the videos for training camp. Really appreciate him taking the time and taking a chance on me for sure. So thank you again, Justin. Go see him. You will not be disappointed. So talking about the 53-man roster, look, a lot of stuff came out. Like, I think when you look at this roster, few shocks, few surprises. I think the first one that stood out was Bradley Roby getting released. Now, look, going into this season, everything we were told, everything that happened, just walk you down the timeline a little bit, Bradley Roby was going to be the starting slot guy, right? And so there was something we talked about back in February, March, is that Alontae Taylor was going to get work in the slot, right? And so this is not new information, but really what it shows is the Saints getting a lot younger and really taking a chance on Alontae Taylor being that guy. This is somebody who started, kind of third team in the slot, got up to the second team. They've tried him in the first team, but essentially you're putting your three best corners out there on the field at any given time. And look, we had been talking about Paulson Adebo. He was always going to be the starter opposite of Marshawn Lattimore, something we talked about. We've also mentioned the fact that, him and Taylor could rotate on series, but now you've painted the picture where Alontae is going to be that primary guy. You also have Ugo Amadi, who could also be there for this team too. But really interesting decision to move on from Bradley Roby. Wasn't the most shocking thing, I guess, of the day, but really one of the most shocking things that we learned early on. But, look, I still think they're solid at corner. You got Isaac Yadam. He's a guy that is much like JT Gray, hard, gritty guy. He can fill in as far as a reserve role, too. He made the roster as well. No real surprises at corner. Safety-wise, the only thing that I was a little bit, I was on the fence about it because I wrote this on Saints News Networks, in my final roster projection, kind of saying what the roster would be. Jonathan Abram was kind of one of those on the fence. I could see by a numbers game that, he might be one that doesn't get in. I talked about Lonnie Johnson Jr. Look, this whole entire rookie class, without talking about Jordan Howden specifically, they all made the roster. First time that's happened since 2017. Plus, you got the undrafted guys. We'll get in there a little bit more. Linebacker, look, no real surprises there. I know people have talked about Zach Vaughn, but he's a guy that they're going to use. Not keeping Jalen Smith. Dennis Allen saying there's absolutely a chance that he comes back. I think that's the case that, look, they had to keep some of these guys initially on the roster, like Ryan Connolly, Landon Young, Traquan Smith. I expect them to go to IR. We'll see how that kind of shakes out. We have seen Traquan on the sidelines and Landon Young on the sidelines. Also seen him at the facility, so those are obviously good signs. We'll see kind of how they shake out because, look, 4 weeks is the minimum of what you have to miss when you do go on IR. So that would probably be something if these guys are not readily available in the first couple of weeks, put them on there, get the roster spot to somebody who is going to play for sure. So, but, Alvin Kamara's suspension started. That's something he's going to be out for the first 3 games. He cannot practice. He cannot play. He's going to be away from the team, obviously. So watching from afar. So there'll be a little bit of intrigue and interest there. They kept Kirk Merritt. I thought they would keep Ellis Merriweather in that spot. Everything I heard that they may not be done there, might look at a veteran running back to come in to help shoulder that load for the first 3 weeks. And look, a lot of player movement. I mean, almost 1,200 players that get dropped now. And you get 16 people back on a practice squad. 6 can be vets. 10 can be guys that don't have that accrued experience. I expect some of the guys that were dropped, like your John Trey Kirklands or your Shaq Davis. Those are 2 of many that are primary for the practice squad. But, diverting from what I kind of talked about, right, is linebacker. Jalen Smith was, I don't want to say surprised because I think Jalen Smith did everything he needed to and then some to make a roster, right? But Nephi Sewell was a guy that he plays hard. Special teams matter. That's not totally surprised because, again, I wrote about him that he could be one of those guys who at the end of the day, kind of on the fence when you're talking about a numbers game, but he and DeMarco Jackson get in. Defensive line, I think every single person in New Orleans media had the entire defensive line pegged out, all your 5 rushers. And plus your guys on the interior, no surprises there. I know Nico Lalo's balled out in the preseason and such. He's somebody, him and Jack Heflin, I think are priorities for this practice squad for sure. But we'll see again how it shapes up because you're auditioning for 31 other teams in addition to the Saints. So again, we'll know more about that probably Wednesday afternoonish. Veterans don't have to worry about the process, but guys that don't have that experience, subject to waivers, so they can't really kind of control their destiny there. And then you go to the offensive side. Quarterback, no surprise. Running backs, we just kind of talked about it. Keeping Adam Prentice. Look, this guy has got a lot more of a role than I think a lot of people believe in. And so, he's somebody that also think can help out in this grand scheme of thing. Wide receiver wise, look, I've been telling you about Keith Kirkwood. I don't care how you feel about it. The guy earned a roster spot, right? Plain and simple. So I'm not surprised that Keith Kirkwood made this roster. He worked extremely hard. He also balled out in training camp. Didn't really have to see much from him in the preseason. But again, now that they've taken a chance on him, he's got to produce. Obviously, we'll see how that kind of works out. Does have some special teams abilities as well. So we'll kind of see how those things come together. Tight end, no surprises. We told you, Jimmy Graham. I didn't need to see much because I thought Jimmy was back. But after LA and after the preseason game, there was no way you could not keep him on the roster. I know it's tough because Lucas Kroll had that really good game to finish out the preseason. He'll be back in some capacity. He's going to be on a roster, right? It's a practice squad roster for sure. You don't have that type of success, but, I could see him definitely on the practice squad. Offensive line is where it kind of got a little bit interesting. I had reported that they were moving on. Not moving on, but they were waiving Lewis Kidd and then releasing Calvin Throckmorton. Throckmorton was a little bit more shocking than maybe Lewis Kidd. And here's what I tell you about Lewis Kidd. Definitely can come back in the practice squad. I think there might be some other priorities there at first, but guy can play left tackle, guy that can play right tackle in the interior. They were actually trying him out at left tackle because they knew what he could do at right tackle and inside, just kind of more of a stretch. And so it was a little bit difficult, talking about stance and protection there. But, again, versatile guy, he's going to latch on somewhere. Same thing with Calvin Throckmorton. It's not going to surprise me to see somebody pick him up if New Orleans doesn't bring him back. Tommy Kramer's a guy to keep an eye out for on the practice squad or maybe even the 53-man roster. But, I think overall 53-man roster, couple surprises, nothing crazy surprising, I guess you could say, besides Roby and maybe not Jalen Smith making it and then Throckmorton for sure. But, we got to look at practice yesterday, and I'll get into special teams, I promise, here in just a second because we've given plenty of thoughts on that. But yesterday, saw practice, guys that we didn't see that were on the initial roster, JT Gray, Marshawn Lattimore, Traquan Smith, and then Landon Young. Again, I don't know if we panic about Gray, but, Lattimore was already kind of being held out for precautionary reasons because of the knee. And then Traquan and Landon Young are really the two wild cards, so we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But, we'll kind of just check. I mean, this roster's not set in stone. You make the initial roster, but because of numbers, players that come up, things can change, right? And so those are the things that we'll keep an eye on. Now, as far as special teams, look, most all of us had picked Lutz and Gillikin, right? I was guy on Lutz and Gillikin. I wasn't as sold on the punter position because there's inconsistencies there, but Headley wins the job. And so, look, that's an important position. I mean, the guy's a 30-year-old rookie, but look, he plays well. I think the only concerns I've had about him is the hang time and, again, the consistency. I think that he can end up proving himself really well, but we're going to just have to see how that kind of shakes out. It's tough for Gillikin. I'm sure he won't be out long, but, they decided to move on from him, and so it's two undrafted rookies, right? And so the thing about Groupie is, again, he had an amazing training camp, neck-and-neck battle. I went with him just because Ty goes to a runner situation, right? And the fact that he did get traded to Denver, not surprising. That was a rumor that came out really early on. Sean Payton picks him up, 7th-round pick. Get a little bit of something. That was my only thing going back about the compensation. The only thing is if you were going to release Bradley Roby anyway, he's inexpensive. I thought you could get some type of compensation for him. If he's not in the plans, that was my only issue with Bradley Roby is that, okay, you're moving on from a veteran that's played a lot of snaps, a lot of good things that he does on tape. why couldn't you got some compensation, right? I think that was my only concern there with the Roby move. Might have been a little bit more. But look, Blake Grupe's going to be the guy, and I've talked about this before. If you went with Lutz, you know what you're getting, right? And he's healthy, so I think he's going to have an outstanding year, right? And so the question, the thing that comes into play is now Grupe, when you look at it, Lutz was going to be a free agent after this year. Saints would still have to be in a boat where they had to find a kicker if Lutz wasn't going to be re-signed. But Grupe, 4 years, I believe, is what his UDFA deal is going to end up being. He's going to be your kicker of the future. If it works, everybody looks like a genius, right? And the thing is, if this team gets into a deep postseason run and you're faced with a rookie kicker in a situation where he has to make a kick in a championship game or divisional game, a wild card to win, this is where it's going to come into play. We know Lutz can do it. We've seen Lutz do it accurately. This is just the chance you're taking on an undrafted rookie like a Blake Grupe. But incredible story. He kicked the crap out of it, right? I mean, he absolutely wowed. There was only one minor kick difference in between the two, between training camp and preseason. So we'll see how this kind of shakes out. I mean, this is a big deal for the Saints. You got an offense that's going to put a lot of points up on the board. Grupe's very, I guess you could say, undersized, but, man, he's got a leg cannon for sure. So this is going to be one of those things. But practice squad starts shaping out on Wednesday. You know, you got the waiver process. We'll keep an eye on that. But then you got your practice squad, 16 men that you can do. And then we got week 1 right around the corner. So enjoy Labor Day. We'll have more to talk about. As you'll notice, you got SeatGeek at the bottom left corner. Again, if you haven't heard or you don't know, just sports fans in general, use my code Hendrix. That's Hendrix, just like you see it on the screen. Hendrix, like Jimmy, not like the gin, is my favorite tagline to use because it's the right way to spell it, first of all. And Jimmy, for the obviously you guys might catch the reference. I'm older, right? I don't let this little face fool you. I'm a lot older than you probably believe. But, you know, use my code SeatGeek on SeatGeek Hendrix. Save $20 off your first order. Use it. Save some money. More things hopefully coming up. That's going to do it for us. Talking about the 53-man roster. Tons more coming. Stay tuned to Saints News Network, Saints.media for more. You see all the stuff at the bottom. Follow us. Give us a shout. Hopefully big things are coming this season. We'll talk at you soon. Thanks, guys.